He's the man, he's the myth, he's the legend, he's the scientist with all the answers and all the questions. It's time for another episode of Alex's Science Corner.
Thank you. Oh, please, thank you. Hello.
Alex, what's going on in the wide, wide world of science, my friend?
All right, first up is scientists from China have been able to do some monkey clones, or created clones of monkeys. Now, these are not the first monkey clones that have been done, but this is the first time they've cloned monkeys using a particular technique that gives the exact genetic duplicate of the parent cell. So whatever the parent is, these clones are going to have the same genetic material as, or the same genetic makeup as the parent did. And
that's kind of scary.
Yeah. I want to know what they're starting with for material.
Well, what they do is they take, for this particular method, they take a cell or the egg, and they remove the genetic material from the egg, and they put in the genetic material of the parent cell.
Okay, so they're not creating a clone from scratch, so to speak.
Well, that is creating a clone from scratch.
No, because they've got an egg.
Yeah, that's creating a clone from scratch.
Don't argue with the science, dude.
Okay. So that's what they can. I'm talking about
it's
creating
sperm
the
and egg. That is, that's, if you think that's from scratch, that's slightly different. And that's what they were doing in one way, is using a egg and then providing the other half the material to force. This way, what they're doing is
the sperm is the man-made.
Well, that's human-made.
Right.
That's how life normally happens. And what they're doing is they take an egg and they remove the genetic material from the egg, and they put in a full-size genetic material from the parent that they want to make the clone of.
But it's okay. Okay.
So I think you're thinking this is much more technical. I mean, it's incredibly technical for what they're doing.
Okay.
But the result is the same. You put genetic material in an egg, and it's going to grow up to be a baby.
Okay.
The reason they're doing this, or they've been doing clones, and they've had variations of monkey clones before. This is the most identical clone of a parent that they had before. And the reason they're doing that is to be able to study different types of neurological diseases that have a genetic basis, like let me try that in English. Huntington's disease and some types of autism. And there's, by being able to create these genetic identicals, they can study the progression of the disease, and then they can try to see what kind of treatments will work on those genetic diseases. And so by being able to create these clones, they hope to be able to study and treat some of these serious genetic defects and genetic diseases.
Yeah, there's an ethics issue there, isn't there?
Well, what do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't want to extend your.
Well, I understand.
I think there's an ethics.
Methics.
The challenge is how do you study this? It's either you use animals or you study it, test it on humans. And so,
But I mean, even if you're creating a clone, you're still, it's still a living life form.
Yes, and the other way you test it is you get a whole bunch. The way they do test it now is they get a whole bunch of monkeys, and they experiment on the monkeys right now. Now they're just making genetically identical monkeys to make the testing easier to isolate the genetic differences.
Okay.
So the ethics is, why are we testing on monkeys, and the alternative is we test it on humans. So unfortunately, that's the ethical dilemma. Whether we're making clones or not.
I think there's an ethical dilemma even creating a clone. But go ahead. What's your next story?
That's a topic for another time, Bobby.
Yeah. Next story is about concrete. And
this is what Brian wanted to throw at me.
Yes. Concrete, they believe there's going to be able to make self-healing concrete. And what they're doing is they're putting fungi spores, and I'm not going to give the name of the exact fungi spores, and nutrients mixed in with the concrete. And what will happen is when the concrete starts to crack, it exposes the spores. The spores use the water and air and nutrients, the water and air that come in through the crack, and the nutrients that are already in the concrete, and it starts building up calcium carbonate that refills the crack.
Clever. That's clever.
And then when the crack refills from the spores go back into hibernation. So as the concrete cracks, the spores refill the cracks, and it'll go on like that. Now, obviously, like us, it won't prevent traumatic injury, but it will definitely prevent cracks from forming or minimize the damage from cracks. Because one of the things that happens is cracks start to form, water gets in, and then starts to make the crack worse.
Yeah, well, especially winter it freezes and
right, and
expands
concrete.
and then
Right, and
that's
concrete
happening
is
to
pretty serious.
My rock wall.
Concrete is a pretty serious building material that we use, but it does have some issues with it, and they're hoping to go past the laboratory stage on this. It's been tested in the laboratory. The challenge is they haven't been able to have it work real well outside of the laboratory.
So it's a fungus. It's a fungus that they're using?
You're right. They're using a fungus. Fungal spores are mixed in with the concrete, and then what will happen is when cracks form, the fungus comes out of hibernation or out of the spore state.
So they're not going to look like mushrooms that you can go and eat.
No.
Okay.
No. There's a lot of different types of fungus.
That's what I could see coming next, is that it becomes edible.
There's a lot of different types of fungus, and the edible kinds are a completely different topic.
Okay, but it would be neat, don't you think, that you got this
you have a concrete
that's
and
growing, and then you can eat it.
There's all kinds of. If you ever see how they make mushrooms right now, I don't know if you'd want to eat mushrooms.
You're not going to talk about the super blood blue moon, whatever that is on the.
Oh, that's right. That's coming up.
First one since 1866.
Yeah.
It's a blue moon and it's a super moon.
A supermoon is when the moon is full and it's on its closest approach to the Earth. The difference between a supermoon and a normal full moon is if you hold a pea outstretched, that's the normal moon. And if you hold a slightly larger pea outstretched from your hand, that's going to be a supermoon. And the blue moon means that it happens at a certain time of year.
No, blue moon means there's 2 full moons in
He's
the month.
unimpressed.
Right.
So,
right.
All right.
It's the fact that you have 2 in a month, it's like if it was in February, it wouldn't be in the same month. So, yeah.
Well, but it doesn't happen every year.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
So
all right.
we're having one in January
we'll talk
and
about
one in
that a
March.
little later. All right. If you have any
You
questions.
brought it up.
I know. And,
Yeah,
and let's put it to bed. All right. If you have any questions about
Also
these,
known as if Brian starts a news story, maybe it wasn't that much of a news story.
Exactly. I should have done it a little earlier. Get you all riled up, Bobby. All right. If you have any questions about these stories or any other science-related issues, you may call Alex right now at the station at 203
837
99
24.